Bună dimineața și bun găsit, vă spun de aici, din Parlamentul European. Sunt Sabina Iosub, BU începe chiar acum. Vreau să vorbim puțin despre taxe și în mod special despre taxa de poluare. Câți dintre voi nu v-ați gândit să vă luați o mașină poate ceva mai veche, pentru că nouă e foarte scumpă, și ați întâmpinat această problemă a taxei de poluare? Vedem exact care este situația în România și care este discuția la nivel european.
Parcul auto românesc îmbătrânește de la un an la altul pe fondul decalajului tot mai mare dintre numărul de mașini noi și vechi înmatriculate la noi în țară. Avem județe unde la o mașină nouă vândută sunt importate alte 33 second-hand. Nici programul Rabla nu este de mare ajutor în acest caz. Anual reușește să scoată de pe străzi doar 25.000 de mașini, iar vârsta medie a autovehicolelor înmatriculate în România continuă să crească de la an la an. În urmă cu 9 ani, piața autolocală era în plină expansiune, iar vârsta media unei mașini ajunsese la 11,2 ani. În 2010, aceasta chiar scăzuse sub 11 ani. Anul trecut însă pragul a trecut de 13,3 ani. Cei drept, nici piața locală nu ajută prea mult la creșterea mediei de vârstă în condițiile în care cifrele arată o scădere atât a producției cât și a exporturilor. Pe poarta fabricii din Pitești au ieșit anul trecut aproape 340.000 de Daci, în timp ce la Craiova s-au produs doar în jur de 48.000 de Forduri. Spre comparație însă, mărcile de import au reușit să vândă mai mult în 2015 decât în 2014. Volkswagen, Skoda și Renault sunt în top 5, cu peste 25.000 de mașini importate în România. Primele două au înregistrat creșteri de până la 13-14% fiecare. Dacă tragem linie, România are o piață auto care a crescut anul trecut cu 20%, dar încă suntem departe de nivelul din 2007, când segmentul era în plină expansiune. Comparativ cu acea perioadă, înregistrăm o scădere de 67%. Cu toate acestea, dealerii de mașini sunt optimiști și spun că 2016 este anul unei noi creșteri pe segmentul auto.
I have two important guests. Kosmas Lotowski from Poland, thank you for being with me, and William Tots from Trucks and Climate, is it correct? Trucks and Climate?
Transport and Environment.
What does it mean?
Transport and Environment, we are a sustainable transport group, so we are a federation of around 49 NGOs across the European Union, and we work on sustainable transport, so on making transport greener and cleaner and healthier.
So you know all the taxes in the European Union for a car, for transportation, for things like this?
I don't know them all because there's very many different systems in all different countries, but we have a good overview of what exists around the EU.
We have a lot of taxes in Romania, and we'll talk about them. What is the situation in Poland?
We have mainly the taxes of transportation are in the price of fuel, but there are, of course, normal commercial taxes.
Do you pay taxes when importing a car, when buying a car?
By buying the car, you must pay value-added tax, but I think it's common in all European Union, and it depends on the price and on the car. Sometimes you must pay an extra tax for luxury.
What about the pollution tax, the tax for the emissions?
There are no special taxes for the emission.
We have some interesting situations in Romania. I've told you before starting recording that we have the situation of Euro 4 and Euro 3. We have to pay a lot of money when buying a car with Euro 4 and Euro 3, but when buying a car with Euro 1 or 2, there is almost nothing to be paid. So every person that wants to buy a cheap car can go to buy one, and that car will pollute more.
Well, I think that's probably the contrary of what most European countries do. I think in most European countries you have systems where people are encouraged to buy the most efficient and the cleanest cars. So, you know, people are encouraged not to buy Euro 1 cars, which are generally quite old, are fitted with technology and engines that are more polluting and that do damage to human health. And they're encouraged to buy Euro 4, 5 and 6 engines because car makers and truck makers have invested in technologies that make these vehicles better. And so tax policy is used to encourage people to buy these cars.
They, and when I say they, I mean the Romanians, have found an interesting solution to these taxes imposed in our country. Going to Bulgaria, for example, in order to not pay all these taxes. Should there be so many differences between the member states regarding this subject? We've heard what is happening in Poland. I've told you what's happening in Romania. The differences are big.
Well, I think it would, of course, be useful. It would be good to have more common standards when it comes to taxation, but I think we also know that taxation is a core national competence and that it's extremely difficult to harmonize anything relating to taxation at EU level. So I think that it is very difficult to do that. On the other hand, there is one tax which is related to pollution that is actually harmonized at EU level, and that is the fuel tax. Fuel tax at European level there's a minimum fuel tax, and that's the reason why the difference between countries like Romania and Bulgaria and countries like Belgium and Luxembourg, that these differences are not so big because there's a minimum level. But this is, I think, one of the few examples where you really have a common tax base.
I think that in every country there is a huge discussion about moving away from pollution, let's say. What is the discussion in Poland, and what do you think should be done in your country or at the European level regarding this aspect?
Well, there is nothing special in this, that there are different taxes in different countries, and we say we are united in variety, so it's okay. And it's also a mean of competition, the taxes. And if you are speaking about pollution and what we are doing in Poland, well, there are two sides. One side is environmental people who think that we pollute too much. But there is the other side, which says that the pollution and the emission of CO2 from Europe is less than 8% of pollution in the world. So we don't have such a very big problem with emission of CO2 in Europe. And if there must be some strange ways to less the pollution, I'm not sure. I think we do our best, and it's good as it is.
I've understood that here in the European Parliament we are talking about a newly formed emission measurement in the automotive sector inquiry committee. What should this committee do?
Well, I think what we've seen in Europe is that we have standards for vehicles to make them less polluting. And there's, on the one hand, you have CO2, which is a problem for the climate. On the other hand, you have all sorts of emissions that make people sick. And for these emissions that make people sick, Europe has, for 20 years, has told manufacturers, you need to clean your engines. And to some extent, that is what car makers have done. But the Volkswagen affair also shows that, in reality, car makers have not performed as well as they have promised. And so you see that there's a difference between what happens in the test labs on the one hand and what happens on the street on the other hand. And I think what the inquiry committee should do, and what Europe should do in general, is make sure that when laws are adopted, that the law is also enforced, because you cannot have ambitious legislation to protect people's health and then not enforce the law.
In practice, who should do this?
Who should put the norms?
Who should see exactly how the norms are followed?
So, well, the countries, of course, the governments, of course, but sometimes they avoid to do it.
We've seen that. So, how we should do it better?
Well, the question is if we should do it better, really. Because
point of view. Tell me more.
So, as I said, there is in European Union, there is no problem of emission of CO2.
As compared
Europe, as European Union, we our emission is less than 8% of the emission in the world.
But this doesn't mean that we don't have any emission or that we are not...
It is, of course there is emission, but it is very, very less. So if we want to decrease this emission, it's very costly, but not very effective. And in terms of climate change, climate changes, climate has changed all the time, and there were no any emission of CO2 or other gases, and the climate has changed. So I'm not sure if the climate changed because of emission of CO2.
From my point of view, I think we have to do whatever is necessary in order to have our people healthier. Of course, this costs, and sometimes a lot.
I mean, I'm not sure we need to go into the discussion about whether climate change is caused by human beings or not, but I think we need to make the distinction. On the one hand, there's the issue of CO2 in climate change. On the other hand, there's the issue of people breathing air with all sorts of things in it that makes them sick. And this is, I don't think anyone disagrees that this is a problem that we should solve. So reducing emissions that make people sick is technically, it's possible. New cars are fitted with all sorts of technologies that make this possible. And we can use taxation to accelerate this. But of course, we need to make sure that when these cars are put on the market, when you go to a car shop, you buy a new car, that if it says it's a low-emitting car, that it is really a low-emitting car. And the problem that we have in Europe now is that on the sticker it says it's very good, but actually once you start driving on the road, it performs completely differently. And to come back to the question that you asked previously, who should control this? Well, we should move to a situation where you have independent authorities, preferably at European level, looking at these test houses. Because if the French government is responsible for Renault and Peugeot, and the German government is responsible for Volkswagen and Opel and Audi and Porsche, well, then you have a situation where it is, well, to say the least, not, that's probably not the best situation to have. You probably need an independent European authority to oversee that situation.
You are thinking of governments protecting their own industries.
Well, I think the reality is that some of these companies, big car manufacturing companies, are partly owned by governments. So it is normal that governments have to oversee their industries, but it is also normal that if, for example, the Volkswagen case, why was it found out about in America and not in Europe? I mean, most diesel cars are sold in Europe, not in the United States. And the problem of NOx emissions and pollutant emissions has been known for 10, 20 years. So why did Europe not find it out, and why did the Americans find it out? And the answer is, well, because the Germans were checking Volkswagen, and in America, you have an independent authority, the Environment Protection Agency, that conducts these tests and does that much more effectively than national governments in Europe.
Well, but Europe has its own interests, and if there were an authority to control all car industry in Europe, the car industry in Europe, in France, in Germany, but also in other countries, in Italy, in Romania, in Poland, is a very big part of economy, isn't it? Absolutely. So we can imagine that this European authority would protect European car industry. So I think let the governments, the national governments, do it truly. And this is the answer.
What do you think about what happened in the Volkswagen case?
Well, they were cheating, and cheating is bad. This is quite simple.
Do you think that when having such a case in Europe, this case should be the start for moving to independent agencies or independent people looking at
No at all.
Why? Give me some arguments.
The main argument is that the European authority could protect in this way, in this bad way, our European industry. So this is not the answer. They were cheating and they must be punished. This is the answer. They must be punished.
But they were catched not in Europe, but in...
But they were catched.
Finally.
Finally, they were catched.
Let's talk a little bit about prevention.
And if we have such a special authority, are you sure that they would be catched?
I'm not, but I think it's a good step in preventing.
And that is the answer. Why I don't want to have another additional authority in Europe.
And what should we do? Just stay and pray for not happening again, such a case?
No, there are authorities in Germany which can punish Volkswagen.
Volkswagen is just an example. I was thinking
and there are authorities in France, in Paris, in Romania, which can, in such case, punish their own enterprises.
Do you trust your own organism in Poland?
If I don't trust my own organism in Poland, why should I trust to an extra authority? Of course I do.
Maybe multiple levels of checking are good. Maybe. It's a discussion.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the first principle is that the law needs to be followed. And if we adopt
the law needs to be followed.
Then it needs to be followed. I think the second...
And if it is not?
If it is not, then it needs to be, it needs to be corrected. So there need to be fines.
You know, the law?
You need to follow the law.
The law should be corrected?
No. People that don't follow the law, if you...
Yes, of course. They should be punished.
If I commit a crime, we don't change the law. We make sure that I don't commit a crime in the future again. And I think that's the situation that we are in Europe today. We have seen that a major, not just a small manufacturer, but really one of the world's biggest manufacturers has been caught cheating on a very large scale. And we didn't know anything about it in Europe. Well, we did, but we couldn't do anything about it. And I think the case for more European involvement in this is that if you're in a situation where, for example, the Belgian or the French or the Romanian authorities find that there's a problem with a car, they see, okay, this car is not respecting the limits. What can they do? They have not approved that car, so they need to go to Germany and say, dear German colleagues, we have found that there's a problem with an Opel car. Can you please correct the problem? And then if the Germans say, well, it's not really our priority, nothing happens. And I think that's the situation that needs to change. In that case, the European Commission or an independent authority should be able to intervene. And I think that would be to the benefit of all, also to the car industry.
And if the European Commission is not able to do this or does what the Germans did in this case, what should we have another upper European Commission?
No, I think
a new extra one?
No, I think that's why it's so important to have an independent authority.
We have in Europe enough authorities. We don't need more. We must follow the law, and we must have consequences. So punishing companies which don't follow the law.
Moving from companies to people again, do you think that a person in Romania and a person in another member state should pay the same amount in terms of taxation? I know that at this moment the level is different, but should we move forward to a situation in which being a European citizen means that you have to pay the same taxes?
I don't think so. I think the situation in Romania, Poland, Belgium, or Sweden is very different. And I think there's also a difference in what people can actually afford. But I think it would be good if governments would try to at least move more or less in the same direction. So if most of Europe is encouraging people to buy Euro 4, 5, 6 cars because they are really much more efficient and much cleaner, then I think it would be good if Romania did not do the exact opposite. But whether the exact amount of taxes should be the same, I don't think that should be the case.
Should the taxes be increased for old cars? at the European level, if we can say at the European level, in each member state?
I think that might probably be a good idea because these old cars are often much more polluting than the new cars. And again, I mean, we have asked our car industry to make very big investments. The car industry, as you said, is a very big economic player in the European Union. I think it is a bit strange to ask your industry to make huge investments in new technology and then have a tax system where you say, don't buy the new cars, buy the very old cars.
You've told me earlier that in your country you are not paying a pollution tax at all for the old cars. Why should I pay in my country?
Because you want, not personally you, but your parliament want you to pay it. You can change the parliament.
Or the country, you might say. Are you? Will you come to Romania?
There are such ideas that the old cars, that the possessors of old cars should pay more, and even that the old cars wouldn't be let in centers of the cities. There are such ideas, but I hope it will be nothing.
Okay, so if I'm coming to Poland now, I will pay only the VAT for the car when buying even a very old car. I will pay only the VAT tax and
in special cases you will pay luxury tax. If it is
for an old car,
if it is Rolls-Royce, for instance.
Okay, so I should go to Poland, right? In order to buy a very old car, if I don't have the money to buy a new one. Or go to Bulgaria, as I said.
I'm not the one to say where, you know. I think we need to distinguish between what people do individually and what government policy is. People react to, you know, certain taxes. If you have a tax system, for example, in Belgium or in the Netherlands, you have a system where you are constantly encouraged to buy cars that are cleaner and that are better in general because, you know, they make people less sick. I think this is preferable to a system where you don't have any guidance or where you have a guidance that goes in a different direction.
How huge are the differences in this area?
Very significant.
We've seen this through our discussion. Thank you for being with me today. It was a very important discussion. Vouă, celor de acasă, vă spun să rămâneți pe Antena 3 și să vedem exact cum ar trebui noi aici, în țara noastră, sau mai exact acolo, în țara noastră, în România, să mergem în ritmul în care au început să meargă cei de aici, de la Bruxelles.